I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. My name is Mike, and I've been with my wife, Emily, for about 8 years now. We got married young, and honestly, I always believed we were solid. She was the girl I could trust, the girl I wanted to build a life with. But everything started to feel off while I was deployed overseas for 6 months. I kept telling myself it was just the stress, just missing her too much, but little signs began to pop up that I couldn't ignore. At first, it was small stuff. She'd be more irritable, snapping at me over nothing, canceling plans last minute with a weird excuse, and acting strangely secretive about her phone. I didn't push too hard, thought maybe she was just stressed with the kids or overwhelmed with her work. That was until I started noticing her phone disappearing for long periods, and she was unusually defensive whenever I asked about her plans or texts. She'd say she was at her sister, or just running errands, but I had a gut feeling that something wasn't sitting right. The worst part, she started to become super bitchy, snapping at me for the smallest things, invalidating my feelings, basically acting like I was the problem. I'd come home after weeks away, expecting a warm welcome, but instead I found her cold, distant, and quick to dismiss whatever I said. She'd brush me off, tell me I was just insecure or imagining things. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, but the more I was gone, the more I saw cracks in her armor. I began to notice her messaging someone late at night. No names, no details at first, but enough to get suspicious. One day, I decided to check her phone when she was in the shower. I didn't plan to snoop, just wanted to see if she was texting her sister as she claimed. But I found something else entirely. I saw messages from her boss, Jack, that weren't just about work. They were flirty, suggestive, and downright inappropriate. I couldn't believe it. My wife, who always claimed she loved me, was secretly texting her boss about sex, about how much she missed him, how excited she was to see him. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I wasn't even angry at first, more like stunned. How could she do this to me? I had trusted her, loved her, fought for her when she was crying about her job, and she was out there with him, cheating behind my back. I kept reading, and it only got worse. They talked about meeting up, about how she felt she was stuck in a shitty marriage and how Jack was the only one who understood her. God, I never thought I'd see my wife, the woman I married, turn into someone so cold and deceitful. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, staring at her messages, trying to process what I'd found. I couldn't even be mad at her yet. I was just numb. All the trust I had in her was shattered, broken into tiny pieces, and I knew everything I thought I knew about our relationship was a lie. That's when I started to think about what I should do next, and honestly, I was terrified to confront her. I had no idea what her reaction would be, but I knew deep down this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind was spinning, and I couldn't shake the images I'd seen the night before. I kept going over everything, her texts, her lies, the way she'd been acting like I was the problem all along. I knew I couldn't just pretend I didn't see it, but I also didn't want to jump into action without thinking. I needed a plan, some way to get all the facts straight and figure out what I really wanted to do. I decided I'd stay quiet for a bit. I didn't want her to know I'd discovered her affair right away. I wanted her to slip up again, to say something I could use against her if I decided to confront her. So I kept acting normal, making coffee, pretending to be just as clueless as she wanted me to be. But inside, I was boiling with anger and betrayal. I felt like I'd been living a lie, and now I was the one who had to face the truth. Over the next few days, I watched her. She kept up her act of being busy and distant, but every now and then I caught her glancing at her phone or texting in secret. At work, she seemed to be more anxious, more on edge. I couldn't help but think she was hiding something, and I was right. One afternoon, I followed her when she said she was going to visit her sister. She told me it was just a catch-up, but I wasn't buying it. I followed her to a parking lot near a coffee shop she'd never mentioned before. I saw her meet Jack there. They hugged, kissed lightly, nothing overt, but I saw enough. That was it. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I took screenshots of the messages, copied everything I could find, and then prepared myself for the confrontation. I didn't want to rage, but I knew I had to be firm. I wanted her to admit it, to face the consequences of her lies. I also knew I had to be careful. If she was cheating with her boss, she'd probably be manipulative and good at hiding things. I had to be smart about it. When I finally sat her down that evening, I could barely look at her. She was acting normal, but I could see the flicker of guilt behind her eyes. I told her I found something that didn't sit right with me, and I pulled out my phone, showing her the screenshots of her messages with Jack. Her face twisted with anger and contempt. She told me I was crazy, that I was reading too much into it, that it was just work-related banter, nothing more. But I knew better. I wasn't stupid. I saw the way she looked at him, like she was craving something she was too ashamed to admit. She spat at me, saying I was paranoid, that I was overreacting, that I was ruining everything because I couldn't handle the truth. She told me she'd been stressed, that Jack was just a shoulder to lean on, that she never meant for it to go this far. I listened, but I wasn't buying her bullshit. I could see her trying to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty for something she was completely at fault for. The rage inside me started to boil over, but I kept my cool, at least until I finished my side of the story. That night I didn't sleep much either. I felt sick, betrayed. I kept questioning everything, our past, her promises, the life we built. How did I miss all the signs? Why did I trust her so blindly? I loved her, but now I didn't even know who she was anymore. The woman I married turned out to be something else entirely, someone capable of lying, cheating, and coldly dismissing my feelings. I felt a mix of heartbreak and fury, and I knew whatever I decided next wouldn't be easy. I was hurt, but I also knew I couldn't keep living in a lie. The betrayal was too deep, and I was already starting to think about what came after. After that confrontation, everything changed. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew I couldn't just pretend like nothing had happened. The trust was gone. The woman I thought I loved had been sneaking around with her boss, telling him she missed him, probably having sex with him, and lying to my face every step of the way. It was like waking up from a dream, only to find out it was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I spent a couple of days in a fog. I was furious, broken, but mostly just numb. I'd always thought, if something like this happened, I'd be able to handle it calmly, take action, and then move on. But the truth is, I felt like I'd been punched repeatedly. My confidence was shattered, and I kept replaying her words in my head, her dismissiveness, her contempt, her lies. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I convinced myself she was just stressed or distant because of work. I decided I needed space to think. I packed a bag, told her I was going to stay at a friend for a while. She threw a fit, of course, calling me crazy and accusing me of overreacting. She said I was making everything up, that I was paranoid, that I was destroying our marriage for no reason. I didn't argue. What was the point? She knew I knew, and she was trying to spin it into some kind of misunderstanding. I didn't buy it anymore. I could see the manipulation, the way she was trying to gaslight me into doubting myself. The first night away from her was the worst. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her texting Jack, heard her dismissing my concerns, saw her cold face when I confronted her. I felt so betrayed, so stupid for trusting her for so long. It wasn't just about the affair anymore, it was about the trust, the years we built, and how easily she threw it all away. I'd been naive, thinking I was enough, thinking we had something real. Turns out she was just pretending, hiding her true self behind a mask of sweetness and bitchy indifference. I knew I had to make a decision. Do I try to save this, or do I cut my losses and walk away? My heart was telling me to leave, to end it before I got even more hurt. But part of me wanted to fight, to force her to face what she'd done. I wanted her to admit she was wrong, that she was a cheating, manipulative woman who had no respect for me or our marriage. I knew this wasn't just a fling. She was deeply involved with Jack, and she didn't seem to have any remorse. She kept lying, kept denying, but I'd seen too much. I had the proof, and I wasn't going to let her gaslight me into believing her lies anymore. The following days were a blur. She kept texting me, trying to act like everything was normal, like she was the victim. She called me paranoid and accused me of spying on her, like I had no right to find out the truth. She kept insisting she loved me, that it was just a mistake, that Jack was only someone she talked to when she was lonely or stressed. But I knew better. I knew she was lying just like she always did. She was good at it too, flipping the script, making me question my own judgment. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. I started thinking about what I would do next. I wasn't naive enough to think I could fix this, not without her being honest and genuinely sorry. And honestly, I didn't think she was capable of that. She loved her lies more than she loved me. I'd seen enough. I knew I deserved better, more respect, honesty, and loyalty. I couldn't keep living in this mess, pretending everything was fine when it was. So I made up my mind. I was going to confront her again, but this time, I'd be ready to lay everything out on the table and I'd decide what's best for me, whether that was fighting to save what was left or finally walking away for good. That night, I sat down with my phone, took a deep breath, and prepared to ask her the big questions. I needed her to tell me the truth. No more lies, no more bullshit. I was tired of her pretending everything was fine while I was drowning in betrayal. Whatever happened, I knew I had to be honest with myself, and I had to do what was right for me. It was time to face the reality of what she'd done, and I was ready to do just that. The next morning, I woke up feeling more determined than ever. I knew I couldn't keep pretending like everything was okay or that she'd suddenly come clean on her own. If I wanted the truth, I had to ask her directly, face to face. I also knew that this might be the moment everything would blow up. I was prepared for her to deny, spin, or even blame me for snooping. But I didn't care anymore. I needed closure, even if it was going to hurt. When she finally came home that afternoon, I could see the tension in her eyes. She was trying to act normal like nothing was wrong, but her voice was a little too high-pitched, her movements a little too nervous. I decided to cut to the chase. I looked her straight in the eyes and asked, "Emily, I know about Jack. I saw the messages. What the hell is going on?" Her face froze for a second and then she let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, so now you're spying on me. That's just great," she snapped, crossing her arms. "You think I'm cheating and yet you're the one who's been gone for months. Who's really the one lying here?" I felt my blood boil. I was angry, yes, but also exhausted. I knew she'd try these tactics, turn the tables, act innocent, throw words at me to confuse me, but I stayed calm. I pulled out my phone, showing her the screenshots I'd saved. "These are your words, Emily. You're talking about Jack, about how much you miss him, how you're planning to meet up. You're lying to my face and I'm done with the bullshit. Tell me the truth. Did you have sex with him?" Her eyes flickered for a second and then she scoffed. "Oh, please, it was just sex one night. I made a mistake. I was drunk, lonely, and he was there for me. It didn't mean anything. You're overreacting." That's when the anger really started to take over. I couldn't believe she was trying to minimize this, act like it was some drunken fling that didn't matter. I told her, "It's not just about one night. It's about you lying to my face, pretending everything's fine while you're out there screwing your boss. How long have you been doing this? How many nights did you spend with him?" She looked at me, eyes narrowing. "You're damn right I lied. I lied because I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to lose everything. Jack was the only person who understood me, who actually cares. You've been gone, working all the time, and I felt invisible. Is that such a crime?" I shook my head, feeling like I was about to lose control. "No, Emily. What's a crime is you cheating, lying, and making me feel like I was the one who's crazy for trusting you. How long has this been going on? Are you sleeping with him now?" She hesitated, then threw her head back. "Maybe. I don't know. It's complicated, okay? I care about him, but I also care about you. I don't know what I want anymore." That was the moment I realized she was just trying to manipulate the situation to make it seem like she was the victim. She was crying, but it was fake tears, and her words were full of contradictions. I felt my stomach turn. Every ounce of love I was turning into disgust. I'd given her everything, my time, my trust, my loyalty, and she was out there playing me for a fool. I told her I couldn't do this anymore. I said I needed time to think, to process what she just admitted. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her I was done pretending I didn't know the truth. I was tired of her lies, her excuses, her bullshit. I told her I was considering ending the marriage, that I deserved honesty, respect, and loyalty. If she wanted to save this, she'd better be honest and own up to what she'd done. If not, I was ready to walk away. She looked at me, her face contorted with anger and guilt, but she didn't protest. She just said, "Fine, do whatever you want, but you're not perfect either. Maybe you should look in the mirror before you judge me." That was a blow, but I didn't let it shake me. I knew I had to decide what was best for me, whether to fight for this shattered relationship or to cut ties and start over. I felt broken, betrayed, and exhausted, but I also knew I wouldn't let her manipulate me into feeling guilty for something she did. I had to be strong now for myself. I told her I needed some time alone, and I walked out of the house, leaving her standing there furious. I knew I'd have to face the fallout, but for the first time in days, I finally felt like I was coming to terms with the truth. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I moved out of the house, not because I wanted to escape, but because I knew I needed space to think clearly. Being away gave me a chance to breathe and process everything I'd uncovered. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, saw the messages, her cold, dismissive attitude. It was like a knife twisting in my gut. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind, how I missed all the signs. I stayed with a close friend for a while, someone I trusted who listened without judging. I needed that. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, that I deserved better than this betrayal. During those nights, I wrestled with my feelings, anger, sadness, frustration, and a deep sense of loss. I also felt a flicker of relief. Relief that I finally knew the truth, that I didn't have to keep pretending everything was okay. My mind kept circling back to the idea of confronting her again, this time with a clearer head, prepared for whatever she might throw at me. I knew she was manipulative. She'd probably try to guilt-trip me, tell me I was the one who was wrong, that I was overreacting. I had to be ready for all of it. But I also knew I wasn't going back to that house until I had a plan, until I was sure of what I wanted. One day, I decided to dig deeper into her phone. I knew she'd be expecting me to give her space, but I needed more concrete proof. I looked through her messages, more exchanges with Jack, some deleted but enough still there. I found out that she hadn't just had a fling. She was planning to leave with Jack, to start over somewhere else, maybe even file for divorce. That hit me hard. It wasn't just some one-night mistake. It was a full-blown affair, and she was already planning her escape. I felt a mixture of heartbreak and anger. How could she do this? How could she cheat on me, lie to my face, and then plan to abandon everything we built? I realized I had three options: try to fight for her, try to work things out, or just cut my losses and walk away. The more I thought about it, the clearer my decision became. I wasn't fighting for something that was already gone. I was done pretending she was innocent, that there was some way to fix this. I deserved someone who loved me, who respected me enough not to cheat and lie. That night, I sat down and drafted a message, something straightforward and honest. I told her I knew the truth, that I'd seen everything and I was done. I told her I was hurt, disappointed, and that I didn't see a future with someone who could betray me so completely. I told her I was moving on, that I wanted no more contact unless it was regarding the divorce or the kids. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't going to be part of her game anymore. Once I sent that message, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was like lifting a heavy weight off my shoulders. I knew it was going to hurt, but I also knew I was finally taking control of my life. I was tired of being the victim, tired of feeling weak and betrayed. I needed to start over, rebuild my trust in myself, and find happiness again. Looking back, I realize I learned a lot from this. Trust is fragile, and it can be broken in an instant. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought, strong enough to walk away from someone who doesn't value me enough to be honest. I don't regret loving her, but I do regret ignoring the signs for so long. If anything, this has taught me to pay attention to the red flags and not to dismiss my gut feelings. So, for anyone out there going through something similar, here's my advice. Don't ignore your instincts. Confront the truth, no matter how painful. And remember, you deserve someone who respects and loves you enough not to cheat or lie. You don't have to stay in a situation that's tearing you apart. Sometimes, walking away is the bravest thing you can do. After I sent that message, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. It was like finally closing a chapter I never wanted to open in the first place. The silence that followed was deafening. She didn't respond immediately, which I expected, and honestly, I didn't care. I knew she was probably trying to scramble, maybe even coming up with some pathetic excuse or plea to save herself. But I didn't want to hear it. I had already made my decision. Over the next few weeks, the fallout was intense. She texted, begged, tried to guilt-trip me into coming back, but I stood my ground. I didn't want to hear her lies again. I spent that time focusing on myself, working out, reconnecting with friends, and slowly rebuilding my confidence. The pain still lingered, but with each passing day, it became easier to breathe, to get back to who I was before all this mess. Eventually, we went through a divorce. It was messy, mostly because she fought tooth and nail, trying to manipulate the situation. But I stayed firm. I knew I deserved better. The hardest part wasn't the legal process. It was accepting that the woman I loved had betrayed everything we built. Still, I learned to forgive myself for trusting too much, for believing in a fairy tale that was never real. Now, looking back, I realize that I've come out of this stronger. I still get angry sometimes when I think about what she did, but mostly I feel grateful. Grateful that I found out the truth before it was too late. Grateful that I didn't have to stay in a relationship built on lies. This experience has taught me to value honesty above everything else, to trust my instincts, and to never ignore the warning signs. Most importantly, I learned that I don't need someone who's going to lie and cheat to be happy. I owe that to myself, to heal, to move on, and to find someone who truly respects me. I don't regret the pain because it forced me to confront what I deserved, and it pushed me to become better, stronger, and more aware. So, to anyone reading this who's going through something similar, just know this. It hurts, it will crush you at times, but you will survive. You will come out on the other side, maybe battered, but also wiser. Trust yourself, hold on to your dignity, and never settle for someone who doesn't respect you enough to be honest. Because in the end, your happiness depends on you recognizing your worth. And once you do, there's no turning back.